It's happening again. The spine of the Republican Party, if there ever was one, has turned into a jelly-like mass of cowardly old white flesh that threatens not only our nation, but the entire world.
Oklahoma Republican James Langford put together in a bipartisan way the toughest border security bill in the past 30 years. Some say the toughest border security bill ever, and they were going to pass it. And then Donald Trump told them not to pass it. And so Lindsey Graham went from wanting to pass it to not wanting to pass it. Now Lindsey Graham completely betraying his past, completely betraying the memory of John McCain, completely betraying the people of Ukraine, completely betraying the people of Israel, completely betraying the people of Taiwan. Why? Why? All because Donald Trump told him so. Can you imagine being that weak? I can't. I can't imagine being such a political coward that you would betray everything you ever believed because a failed reality TV show host told you to.
Scarborough's right. Lindsey Graham is the official architect of the pathetically weak and struggling Republican Party. Let's start with the border bill. The border bill gave the Republicans everything they asked, ending catch and release, detention after an asylum request, and literally shutting down the border when border encounters reached 5,000. But it's dead because Trump told Mike Johnson to kill it, because strengthening the border bill would hurt this fluttering skin tag in the fall election. The supplemental part of the border bill is what we're talking about right now. And that includes aid to both Israel and Ukraine. Plus, it would bolster our defense in places important like the China South Sea. All right. So there was more to this border bill than just the border. There were a lot of other important things that the Republicans are willing to throw away to make Trump feel good. That's what this is all about. Republicans want to protect this flatulent sociopath whenever they can. And leading that pack is Lindsey Graham, whose lack of backbone is only exceeded by his lack of integrity, if I can mix double negatives. Graham once heralded Biden as a man of unwavering principles until Trump said, cut it out.
Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you like this guy. I think what you like about him, he appears to be strong when the rest of us are weak. He's a very successful businessman, and he's going to make everything great. He's going to take all the problems of the world and put them in a box and make your life better. That's what he's selling. Here's what you're buying. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for.
He once opposed Trump until he didn't. His consistent lack of inconsistency is mind-boggling, but he's not the only Republican who does this. Cruz, who Trump attacked personally, his father and then his wife, Rubio, whose heritage was attacked, then his size, even the size of his penis, and then who's next? Nikki Haley, will she stand up to Trump when MAGA eventually shuts her down?
She brought her husband. Where's her husband? Oh, he's away. He's away. What happened to her husband? What happened to her husband?
We've been asking this question for years. How did the GOP turn into the party of cuckolds, watching Trump insult their parents, their wives, and their children?
Because Donald Trump is sounding like, as usual, a complete idiot. And Lindsey Graham knows better than to accept the idiot's argument on giving money to Ukraine, giving money to Israel, giving money to Taiwan to defend themselves. It was Lindsey Graham and other Republicans who always said, you give this money to help our allies because, you know, it's better to fight them over there than fight them over here, is what Lindsey would always say. And I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but this same type of idiocy was going around after World War I. And so America retreated, wouldn't go in the League of Nations, ended up giving us Hitler, ended up giving us Mussolini, ended up by America's isolationism, allowing Hitler to rise. And what did that cause? Caused a war. And America, because they didn't invest a little bit up front, because they didn't stay engaged, America had to go to war after being attacked, a war that millions and millions and millions of people lost their lives in.
Scarborough's dead on. After World War I, we had the Treaty of Versailles, which punished Germany greatly and created a fertile ground for somebody like Adolf Hitler. Hitler, of course, started World War II, which killed millions. After World War II, we learned a short-lived lesson, and America helped both Germany and Japan recover. And today, they're our closest allies. But for how long if Trump ever again has access to power?
You got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
After the Afghan war in the 80s, where Americans defeated Russia through back-channel skullduggery, we blew it again by not helping a country, Afghanistan, decimated by war, where half the population was under 14. And from those embers grew Osama bin Laden. Now, Ukraine is a Western-style democracy and a door to the West. If Russia's allowed to complete this invasion, what's next? Poland? After Poland? If you think we're spending too much now, what do you think the price will be if all of Europe is a new Soviet state?
And so here we are after that war. Again, please forgive me, but this is important and is relevant to this moment. A lot of the same Republican isolationists wanting to just go home. And that's when Harry Truman got together with a Republican senator who was a former isolationist, Arthur Vandenberg, and they worked together. And they passed the Truman Doctrine. They passed the Marshall Plan. They invested in Europe because communism was knocking on the door of Western Europe. And yeah, they gave Europe billions of dollars. And what happened? It created American century because guess what? Those countries built their economies up. They traded with America, and we were the first among equals. So, Richard Haas, let me bring you in here. It created the American century. And without getting ahead of ourselves, what does everybody think is going to happen at the end of the Russian-Ukraine war? Who's going to rebuild? Ecuador's not going to be rebuilding Ukraine if Ukraine is free and turns into a westernized democratic nation. Venezuela's not. The United States will be there. United States businesses, United States contractors, United States, you name it. We will be in there helping rebuild Ukraine, and Americans will be making a lot of money off of it. Let's just be really blunt right here. So when Lindsey Graham talks about betraying Ukraine and we need a loan because we ain't getting nothing out of it, that's the sort of, Richard, the sort of backward thinking Donald Trump always had that would have meant if we followed the Trump playbook, there would have never been a Marshall Plan. There would have never been the type of foreign aid that we invested across the world that allowed American businesses to grow and that created the American century, Richard.
Here's another question. Why would anybody take advice from this guy, a guy with 6 bankruptcies? Forget for a second his many character shortcomings. Trump's an idiot, or as his University of Pennsylvania professor said, a blanking idiot. Janet Yellen, who was head of the Fed under Trump, once said Trump is clueless about macroeconomics. And finally, Lindsey Graham and the rest of the Republican Party who lacked the will or spine to stand up to Trump and stand up for our country. You think Neville Chamberlain got a bad rep? You will forever be remembered as the men who acquiesced our nation, our democratic principles, to this sloth. Sleep tight. Follow Really American right here by subscribing, liking, and notifications as we try to give you all the truth about Trump and the Republican cult. For Really American Media, I'm Chip Franklin.